The mission of the Calvin Project is endangered species recovery through education. There are fewer than 450 North Atlantic right whales left in the world. The United States has listed them as an endangered species. The National Marine Fisheries Service, non-governmental organizations, and scientists from Florida to New Brunswick have spent the last 30 years trying to understand these charismatic creatures of the ocean. They're trying to help the world's most endangered large whale recover and not go extinct.
The story of our research is the story of Calvin, a North Atlantic right whale. Calvin will be 20 years old next year. Born in 1992, Calvin has experienced all the joys and all the troubles of a modern large ocean creature. Calvin's life will help us tell you about the joys and the dangers of being a right whale. Calvin's life is rooted in the history of all right whales. Soon after her birth, Calvin experienced the rude awakening that ships can and do kill whales. As a juvenile whale, Calvin became entangled in fishing gear, and she met an incredible group of scientists to help save her. As an adult, Calvin has lived a typical right whale life, feeding, migrating, playing, mating, and giving birth. But the future of Calvin and her relatives is unknown, and much dependent on what humans can and will do.
Whales evolved about 40 million years ago from a wolf-like animal. For 30 million years, right whales lived peacefully in the oceans. But 1,000 years ago, the life of a right whale changed forever. The hunting of right whales started in Spain 1,000 years ago. By 1900, right whales were so hard to find that no one hunted them anymore. In 1935, the United States banned all hunting of the right whale. Of course, this is why whales were hunted in the first place. Here, you see a family at the turn of the 20th century. Notice the products of oil lamps, umbrellas, and corsets that were provided from whales. In 1935, a law was passed that prohibited hunting right whales. That year, the last whale was killed legally. It was a calf off the coast of Florida. This is a newspaper picture of the actual event. The mother of the calf got away. That mother was seen again in 1970, and then from 1980 through 1995. This whale was at least 70 years old. A much bigger whale in the herd, named Admiral, may be well over 100 years old. From 1935 to 1980, there were very few reported sightings of right whales. Then, in 1980, Scott Kress discovered great numbers of right whales in the Bay of Fundy, while he was surveying the bay for marine mammals as a consultant. Of course, the fishermen knew that whales were there all along, they just did not make much of it.
The easiest way to identify individual whales is by the callosity patterns on their heads. Callosities are patches of roughened skin that whale lice, called cymids, live on. The cymids give the skin a roughened white appearance. Each callosity pattern is unique to each whale, like a fingerprint is for a human. Callosity patterns are described by words like islands, peninsulas, lips, eyebrows, combing, and bonnets. You can see how different these two whales look from each other. There have been 535 individual North Atlantic right whales identified to date.
Calvin was first sighted on August 7, 1992, in the Bay of Fundy with her mother, Delilah. This picture is of a newborn calf and its mother swimming away directly after birth. You can see the blood from the birth behind the mother. North Atlantic right whales have a gestation period of about 12 months. Once a right whale gives birth, she cannot give birth for about three more years. Female whales have to build up a large reserve of blubber before they can support a baby, and that takes about 3 years. Mothers stop feeding before they migrate south in the Bay of Fundy to give birth and do not eat again until they return to Cape Cod Bay 6 months later. To keep going and have energy, the new mother basically lives off her fat, feeding her baby hundreds of gallons of rich milk each day. This is a picture of a newborn right whale. You can tell because of the calf's lack of callosities, scars, or other markings. These pictures are extremely rare because only 2 right whale births have ever been witnessed. This is the second that took place on March 20th, 2010, near a planned Navy training range. The mother is Derecha. The other witnessed birth was of Resolution, calf of cat's paw. It took place on January 1st, 2005, and was photographed by Monica Zanni, also in Florida. When calves are 6 to 8 months old, their calls are the same as the adult whales, but more squeaky. This is a warble call from an 8-month-old female right whale calf.
I don't have a microphone, so if we all be real quiet and no cars go over. I'll do it a couple of times. You hear it down back?
Calvin the right whale has certain characteristics that all right whales have. Notice that the right whales are the fattest of all whales, and they have a unique mouth shape to accommodate their large baleen plates. A right whale's head takes up 1/3 of its body length. Right whale flippers are quite short, and their tail flukes are among the largest of all the whales, only surpassed by the blue line.
In 1992, Delilah, Calvin's mother, was nursing Calvin in the Bay of Fundy. Delilah was hit by a ship and died. Baby Calvin witnessed her mother's death. She was left to fend for herself before the end of the normal nursing process. This is not a storm wave. This is an actual picture of Delilah's moments before she died. A fisherman and his son observed Delilah thrashing at the surface, apparently in distress. Calvin was there to witness. Delilah was found floating dead later that day. The picture in the lower right is of Delilah floating. A necropsy proved that she died from massive trauma caused by a ship strike.
Lucky was another mother killed by a ship, but her story is even more tragic than Delilah's. The whale above was hit by a ship in 1995. She lived and was named Lucky. But 14 years later, when Lucky was pregnant, the old scars opened up, and Lucky died, killing her and her unborn calf. As you can see from this photo, a whale can be severely cut up by a propeller. This particular whale, EG number 3853, was photographed on January 28th, 2011. The whale has not been seen since. It is likely that it died from the massive wounds and sank. Scientists will not consider it dead, however, until 6 years of no sightings have passed. But in one area, ships can be warned to stay clear of right whales. Whales can communicate back and forth, just like humans. Right whales make a number of identifiable sounds. The most notable sound right whales make is the up call.
You don't have it.
You don't have it?
You want me to do it?
No. What do you think these whales are talking about?
You want me to do the up call?
No.
Yes.
You have it.
Yes.
Yes.
That was actually pretty good.
Something like that.
A whale's ear is constructed much like a human's ear. Right whales mostly make and hear the low-frequency sounds that we humans can also hear. New smart buoys have been installed in Massachusetts Bay to warn ships when whales are in the shipping lanes. The smart buoys record ocean sounds in a small area. Researchers can zero in on right whale calls in real time. If a call is detected, the information is immediately broadcasted to ships to notify them the whale's location. The ships can then alter their course and slow down to help avoid a lethal ship strike. Smart buoy technology can help, but it is expensive and may not work for all whales, especially if they are not vocalizing. Another problem is that whales cannot communicate over big ship noises. This is probably one reason whales get hit, because they could easily be confused by the sounds from a big ship and not know which way to turn.
After Calvin's mother died, scientists wondered if Calvin would survive. They had observed that baby right whales were not weaned from their mother's milk for about a year. and it seemed that a mother's example of how to feed on zooplankton was important for the young whale to learn how to eat. Calvin had neither of these options now. But a year later, Calvin showed up in the Bay of Fundy, defying the odds and looking quite healthy.
Just how Calvin learned to feed herself is a mystery, but she managed somehow. Perhaps she copied other whales, or maybe she just instinctively knew how to feed. We'll never know. After nursing, all right whales feed the same way.
Right whales eat copepods. Copepods are a type of zooplankton. Zooplankton are the biggest source of protein in the oceans.
Right whales need up to 1 million calories a day to maintain body functions. That amounts to 2,000 kilograms, or 4,400 pounds, of plankton a day.
Right whales filter feed through their baleen. Their baleen filters out the plankton they use for nourishment.
Whales are the biggest animals to ever live, and they eat the smallest animals in the world. Right whales eat directly from the bottom of the food chain to get the most energy available.
These are diagrams that show the parts of a right whale's mouth. Notice how big the mouth is compared to the rest of the body. This helps the whale gather lots of plankton with a single gulp.
For 6 years, Calvin lived and socialized with her right whale family. One activity she was seen doing was sagging. SAG stands for Surface Active Group, which is believed to be a social bonding activity. Here's a video of a SAG in the Bay of Fundy.
Again, I apologize for the sound, but you'll probably be able to hear.
Calvin was sighted many times in the years after her mother's death. But when Calvin was sighted in 1998, she was yet again faced with a life-threatening event. These are pictures of Calvin showing her entangled body.
Entanglements happen when a right whale swims in the rope attached to fishing gear. When they hit the rope, they twist and roll to get away, but the rope tightens and wraps around their body. Many whales are not freed and are never seen again. Calvin was first sighted entangled in March of 2001 in Massachusetts Bay. The Provincetown Center of Coastal Studies Disentanglement Team attached a telemetry buoy with a satellite tag. You can see from this chart that Calvin traveled hundreds of miles during the 36 days that she had the tag on. The buoy and tag were retrieved in April, floating free. Apparently the buoy helped pull the gear off of Calvin because she was seen gear-free after that. But to this day, Calvin bears the scars of her entanglement.
I gotta stop here and just tell you a neat thing that happened today. We presented at the National Marine Fisheries Services in Gloucester, and one of the scientists who worked on this disentanglement team was there, and the Calvineers got to talk to him about the actual event. It was very neat to do that.
Here's a picture of another entangled right whale. Notice the line goes through the whale's mouth. The chances of the whale freeing itself are slim, and attempts by the disentanglement teams to help the whale are quite dangerous. Baleen is a bad place for right whales to get entangled. The line usually catches fast between the baleen plates and it is hard to remove. Sometimes the line can be attached at the top of the baleen plates like this right whale in the bottom picture.
This situation is very dangerous for the whale because the line can cut a major artery in the base of the baleen and the whale can bleed to death.
The Center for Coastal Studies on Cape Cod responds to reports of entangled whales. Here, rescuers are working on a whale to free it. Governments work with fishermen to develop whale-friendly fishing gear, but whales are still getting entangled. The dangers of entanglements are many. Some whales have died because of entanglements in fishing gear. Those who have been disentangled have lasting scars. Some whales die even after disentanglement. Whale number 3120 was sighted on Christmas Day, 2010, severely entangled. It was sedated and disentangled a month later. Even though whale number 3120 was disentangled, it still died because of an infection that started in the severe open wounds caused by the rope. Entanglements in fishing gear is the second most common cause of right whale deaths. With only about 450 right whales left, entanglements are a huge threat to the right whale population. An average of 2 right whales die each year from entanglements. In recent years, commercial lobster fishermen have had to change the lines they use on their fishing gear to hopefully prevent entanglements. It is believed that the new sink rope will reduce the number of entanglements, but the problem still exists with end lines. Each one of these buoys, lobster buoys, has a line going to the bottom, which are end lines. Whales are still getting entangled in fishing gear. Many entanglements have been documented already in 2011, a year after sinking ground line was required. Scientists are trying to pin down exactly what kinds of lines whales get entangled in and where those lines are coming from. With information like this, they can make better rules for preventing entanglements. It is hard to tell if the sinking ground line rule is helpful. Most entanglement lines are not recovered, and those that are hard to trace back. Fishermen do not want to harm whales. 2 of us recently attended a bycatch conference in Woods Hole, where fishermen and scientists worked together to understand how entanglements might happen. They agreed that it was important to work together on the problem. If we don't listen to fishermen, at some point tempers might flare and there will be a whole new problem to deal with.
The North Atlantic right whale has been studied for 30 years. The amount of data collected about such a small population is monumental. The Urban Whale Book by Scott Krause and Roz Rowland contains 17 chapters written by 37 scientists. Scientists have to find ways to determine if whales are healthy. Scientists can look to see if the whales have smooth black skin, indicating good health. If their callosities have orange cyanids, they probably have cuts and bruises. If the whales have a fat roll behind their blowholes, they are well fed.
Necropsies are helpful because you can tell what killed the animal if there are no physical signs of damage. If you see a whale that has beached itself with no physical signs of harm, then what do? You can do a necropsy and take samples from the animal to figure out the animal's stress level or what they had to eat, and lots more. Knowing these things can help make decisions about the environment, too. If a whale is found dead, and after tests you realize that it is because of food, that means that there is something wrong with the food source in that area. That could lead to other studies in the area to help solve the problem and keep animals safe. Necropsies are like autopsies for whales. Scientists dissect the whales to look at their anatomy, take DNA samples, and try and find out how the whale died. This is a picture of a right whale necropsy. As you can see, it takes a massive effort. Why do we need necropsies? Good question. I'll put it this way. You know how in the crime shows they look for evidence to find out how the person died and who killed them? Well, one of the things a necropsy finds out is what exactly killed the whale. If scientists can rule out a natural death, then they have one more piece in the puzzle about how whales are being killed. That information can be used to help make new rules and regulations that stop certain kinds of deaths. Propellers shred whale skin and blubber, often causing the animals to bleed to death. And the blunt trauma caused by a moving ship's hull often leaves no external evidence. Instead, it breaks jawbones, ribs, and skulls.
Regina Campbell Malone decided to find out how much force was needed to break a right whale's jawbone. She obtained an unbroken jawbone from a right whale named Stumpy, who had been killed by a ship strike to the body. Campbell Malone spent the next several years running Stumpy's 493-pound right jawbone through a variety of stress tests. Her works helped determine the NMFS required speeds of 10 knots or less in areas where right whales migrate and forage. At this speed, ships are likely to not fatally injure whales.
Whales are not good at having their vital signs taken, so scientists have to find other ways to measure a whale's metabolism. Another kind of research is fecal examination. Fecal research can tell us the sex of the whale, certain diseases or infections, whether the whale is pregnant, and how stressed the whale is. Scientists can even tell more about a whale's health from what's inside a whale. Research scientist Roz Rolland and her dog Fargo search for samples of whale feces. If the stress hormones in a whale's feces are very high, the whale is hungry, or infected, or sick. Entangled whales have very high levels of stress hormones. Scientist Joe Roman just published a very interesting article. He calls the article "The Whale Pump." Roman has collected data that shows just how vital whales are to an ecosystem. He proved that whales recycle nitrogen nutrients from the sea bottom to the upper levels of the ocean more than anyone ever knew. The fact that whales add significantly to the ocean's nutrient cycle is reason enough to help save these gentle giants.
Right whales eat hundreds of billions of copepods per day. This is a chart showing the right whale's main feeding areas. These four main feeding areas produce huge amounts of copepods from nutrient upwellings in the Gulf of Maine. And now we know the whales help grow their own meals. The North Atlantic right whale migrates up and down the east coast of North America. During the winter, female right whales migrate south to Florida to give birth. Juvenile whales from 1 to 6 years old tend to do the same. Adult males stay up north all year long. There's a problem with the right whale migration pattern. Right whales migrate right through the world's busiest shipping area, the east coast of the United States. The risk of a ship strike is highly likely in the whale's migration path. We just found out new information about the right whale, about the North Atlantic right whale. We had always thought that the whales stay in Maine waters during winter, but we never knew for sure. Scientist Mo Brown led an expedition last winter taking 4 trips out into the middle of the Gulf of Maine. The National Marine Fisheries Service also sent out survey planes when the weather was good enough. Between the two efforts, scores of right whales were documented in the middle of the Gulf of Maine in winter months.
This is a map showing where Derecha gave birth in 2010, circled in red. The Planned Navy Training Range is circled in blue. The green dots along the coast represent right whale sightings. One must question the wisdom of allowing a naval training range so close to the right whale's birthing grounds.
Acoustics. What is it? Acoustics is the study of sound. It can be the sound of a dolphin, a ship, or a North Atlantic right whale. Without acoustics, we would not know as much about right whales as we do now. And without sound, it would be much harder to find any creature in the ocean, because you can't always see everything that's out there in the water. How does acoustics help save the whales? Well, there are many different projects around the world that use some form of sound to gather information. You can find out a lot just by listening to what sound a whale makes. The picture in the center is one of numerous experiments using acoustics to gather information. Whales, humans, squirrels. We all use sound to communicate. Sound allows us to find each other, relay information, and warn of danger. Whales use low groans and moans to communicate. Acoustics is crucial to right whale survival. One whale could warn the other of impending doom, or it could tell the other where to find food. The graph on the above left shows how decibel levels of noise in the ocean has increased in the last 150 years. The chart on the bottom left shows how CO2 amplifies noise in the ocean. Global warming is increasing CO2 levels in the ocean. On the right is a graph of natural whale sounds on top, and on the bottom, whale sounds covered up by the noise of a ship. Extremely high levels of noise block out right whale sounds, damage your ears, and affect food finding. A big thing we could do to remedy this situation would be to slow ships passing through right whale territory. The slower a ship, the slower the propeller spins, the less noise the engine makes, and the less noise the propeller makes moving through the water. Here is a map of global shipping activity. As you can see, shipping is intense along the east coast of the United States, and the noise levels that are in those waters are deafening to whales and other creatures. This diagram shows the difference between conventional propulsion and diesel-electric engines in ships. Diesel-electric clearly has a smaller sound effect radius of impact. The use of diesel-electric engines in ships could help lower the noise levels in the ocean significantly.
This amazing series of pictures is the first photo record of a right whale birth. 1. Mother thrashing at the surface. 2. Limp calf begins to surface, nudged by mother. And 3. Calf swimming next to mother.
Scientists dart whales to get a small piece of skin for DNA samples. Darting is usually done within a few months of birth. Calvin was darted on August 8, 1992, when she was still swimming with her mother. A year later, after DNA analysis, scientists found out Calvin was a female. This is Canadian scientist Jan Gilbo with a crossbow that has a hollow-tipped dart for collecting a skin sample. Here is a family tree of a whale called Wart. It was constructed from information obtained by darting and DNA analysis. Calvin's calf, born in 2005, has not been analyzed yet, so the father is unknown.
There is good news. Calvin just gave birth to her second calf, and many other right whales are also giving birth. The bad news is that right whales keep dying, especially from human activities.
These are pictures of an entangled right whale and a right whale that has been hit by the propeller of a vessel about the size of a tugboat. Right whales are suffering from humans making mistakes, but sometimes humans are not making the right choices for right whales, and their choices can result in the death of the whale. Choosing fishing line that is too strong and going too fast in a boat are examples of poor human choices. These are pictures made by Scott Landry from the Provincetown Center for Coastal Studies. These diagrams will help the scientists figure out how to disentangle right whales. Scott studies the whales on a computer to recreate how the whale moves in real life so the scientists can figure out how to get the rope off. But ultimately, finding better ways to disentangle whales is not always the best idea. The best idea is to prevent entanglements in the first place. That way, whales just never get entangled. Well, does plastic hurt right whales? Right now, scientists don't know if it does or not. Right whales are known for playing with plastic, but we do not think they swallow any. Scientists do not think chemicals in the water affect right whales either. Scientists think this because they eat so low down in the food chain, the chemicals probably don't accumulate like they do in top predators. The fishing line pictured above is made of plastic too. Fishing line used to be made of natural fibers and was biodegradable. Scientist Amy Knowlton has documented an increase in severe entanglements since the introduction of new plastic ropes in the early 1990s. Scientists believe that global warming does not harm right whales directly as far as they can tell, but global warming can affect the whale's food supply. Drastic changes to the environment can stress any species, even whales.
Whales are very gentle animals. The diver above is being approached by a southern right whale. Neither whale nor diver is afraid. Perhaps someday whales will have a peace they once had in the ocean before humans hunted them.
Whales deserve rights. All life shares the earth, and we should all respect one another. This is a photo of a whale called Bola swimming freely in the ocean in 1997. In 2005, Bola was hit by a ship and killed.
Japan, Norway, and Iceland hunt whales under the guise of scientific research. Some people argue that the United States is just as bad as Japan because whales are being killed by ship strikes and entanglements with fishing gear. The National Marine Fisheries has not been able to stop these types of whale deaths. What do you think?
Here's what we think right whales have a right to. The right to swim freely through the ocean without being hit by ships or entangled in fishing gear. The right to hear and be heard by their relatives. The right to raise their children without interference. The right to natural habitat with enough room and food. The right to swim in waters uncluttered by plastic and chemical pollution.
Here's what the original Calvineers think Calvin is saying to us all. The boundary between two species is immense. Since my story has been written by humans in my behalf, it must ultimately contain only human thoughts. And yet I, Calvin, am the one speaking while swimming about in the story. I speak through interpreters, but I also speak through my actions. I speak through my anatomy and behaviors. I speak through the data that scientists have amassed during the last quarter century. And I speak through the history of all whales, their evolution, natural history, and their relationships with humans. But in the end, I can only speak through the thoughts and emotions of the people who have made it their life's work to study me and my kind.
Writing letters and speaking out is a Calvineer tradition. Calvineers have written letters to former President Bush and other politicians. This is Calvineer Meredith speaking at a Senate subcommittee meeting chaired by Senator Snowe about fishing gear. We are speaking out because right whales are amazing beings. This is a picture of an upside-down mother right whale hugging her baby calf. Let's hope this scene will be repeated for centuries to come. Now that you know the right whale story, share it with others. The more people who understand the plight of the North Atlantic right whales, the more likely things will change.
Write to your representatives and let them know you support right whales research and the rules and laws that are based on the research.
Join organizations like Whale and Dolphin Conservation Society, Ocean Conservation and Humane Society. They all advocate specifically for right whales.
Adopt a right whale. The money goes towards small research efforts that are important but not supported otherwise.
Buy local. Everything you buy, from cars to vegetables, does not have to be shipped if they are locally made and bought. And less shipping could mean less ship strikes.
Watch your carbon footprint and conserve. Global warming certainly causes problems for right whales, as well as most wildlife.
Stop using plastic as much as you can. Plastic is clogging the oceans and interrupting nutrient cycles. Many organisms die directly from eating plastic.
Buy seafood that is responsibly caught. Most aquariums, like the New England Aquarium, have lists of acceptable seafood that lowers bycatch to a minimum. And we especially want to thank our mentors who have answered so many of our questions and given us so many good resources. We would also like to thank all the individuals and organizations who have supported our work.
The end.